So, on the 11th of November, as a result of having a rare hung parliament in Japan, for the first time in about 30 years, there was a runoff election in Japan's House of Representatives to determine who the Prime Minister would be. This occurred because there's no majority in Parliament, and no party or governing coalition has two free seats. Now, the main headlines about this were that Prime Minister Ishiba was eventually selected in the runoff because he got 221 votes, more than anyone else, with Noda of CDP coming in second place with 151. And even though he came short of the 233 needed, because no other coalition was able to get together more votes, he gets to be Prime Minister, and he gets to lead a minority government. Now, that's all very interesting, but I particularly wanted to know how the parties voted, who voted for who, and why. Now, the main thing I want to know is where those extra 6 votes came from, because the LDP was looking to get support, it was talking with different parties like the DPP about a possible coalition. Now, it looks like that hasn't happened, but they did get more than the 215 votes that they and Komeito have. They were on 221, so that's 6 more, which means we have to find 6 votes that went to them in the end. Now, we can safely assume that the LDP and Komeito all voted for themselves, particularly because they got more than 215, so we can rule out those 215 votes. Now, the CDP, who came in second, got 151 votes. So we can safely assume that they got 3 extra from somewhere, and that likely all 148 of them voted for themselves. So we also have to figure out who voted for them. But for now, let's rule out those 148 seats. Very neatly, it appears that a number of parties have voted for themselves because they weren't looking to be seen as supporting the CDP, and they were afraid of the circumstances of bringing down the LDP in like a big coalition and how their voters would react. So Ishin, for example, had 38 seats in the House of Representatives, and it appears they've just voted for themselves. So those 38 votes are gone. Similarly, the DPP had 28 seats, and their leader also registered in the total vote. He got 28 votes, so it seems safe to rule them out and say they voted for themselves, so that's 28 gone. Similarly, Reiwa have 9 seats, and their leader received 9 votes to be Prime Minister in the Parliament, so that's 9 votes gone. Japanese Communist Party, they got 8 votes total for their leader, and they have 8 seats in the House of Representatives, that's another 8 gone. Now, this is where it gets interesting. There are also 12 independents that sit in Japan's House of Representatives, and there was one independent candidate who registered votes in the list of people who got votes to be Prime Minister. Shuji Kira got 4 votes, and he sits in, I believe, a coalition or a block of independents who sort of align together. So it seems very likely his 4 would have come from that list of 12 independents, which means there are now 8 independent votes left. Now, I don't have any way of definitely knowing who voted for who, but this just seems to make the most sense that an independent would get votes from other independents. Next up, Sanzito and the CPJ, the new parties, their leaders or their representatives both got 3 votes each, so we can rule those 2 out. That's another 6 votes gone. Now, based on this, assuming that everyone would vote the way you would expect them to, each party would vote for their own leader, it looks like the only party that's voted for another candidate to be Prime Minister from another party is the SDP. It looks like, and I can't guarantee this, it looks like the SDP may have voted for either Ishiba or Noda. And the 8 remaining independents, some of them would have gone for the LDP and some of them will have gone for the CDP. Now, I can't know this for definite, but my hunch, if I had to put money on it one way or the other, would be that because there's been historic ties between the SDP and the CDP, and just looking at it a bit, I suspect that the SDP voted not for the LDP but went for Noda, which would mean that their next 2 votes came from 2 of the independents, and that leaves 6 independents left over that likely went for the LDP. So the LDP has won, they've got the 221 votes, so in some ways they've done very well. They managed to attract those independent votes, which gives them extra and has confirmed them as PM. Although in some ways you could argue they're a failure because they didn't get any other party to come in behind them and give them a much higher total, which would put them over 233 or give them a secure majority in a coalition. But nonetheless, that's the way I suspect it's gone. I think some of the independents have gone for LDP and some have gone for CDP, as well as the SDP. And for the most part, everyone else has voted for themselves. That's my suspicion. I haven't seen a list of how each representative voted, but that's how I think it went down and how Japan voted for their Prime Minister.